Today, it's all about pride with the shoresh Gimel Alef Yod. Shalom and welcome back to Hebrew Vocab Boost. I'm Sapir and I'm going to beg forgiveness for my appearance. It is excruciatingly hot in here and I have nowhere else to go. So I'm kind of schwitzing all over the place. Today is all about the shoresh Gimel Alef Yod, which is all about pride and surges. Now, the academia, who is, of course, the final authority on these matters, says that the shoresh is Gimel Alef Yod. But whenever there's a Yod at the end, there are many people, scholars, whoever, that say, no, that Yod is actually a Hey. Pealim.com is one of them. And they say that Gimel Aleph Hey is the shoresh for a couple of these words, and Gimel Aleph Vav is the shoresh for specifically just one word, Ga'ava. But basically, they're all related. There are not too many words, and they all have to do with the idea of pride or arrogance, or with some kind of surge. And I think of pride or arrogance as like a surge in one's emotions about themselves, right? We feel that, it can be a good surge. I'm feeling a surge of pride, or it can be an overflow of, how we think about ourselves, where we think too highly of ourselves. And in English, we can say that someone swells up with pride. And so even in English, we have this relationship between swells or surges and pride. So in the Tanakh, this does have that surgy kind of meaning a few times, but most of the meanings have to do with pride or arrogance or haughtiness. And there are 16 uses that I found that are definitely positive. It doesn't have any kind of a negative connotation. And all of these have to do with something that Hashem did, the Lord. So it has nothing to do with someone doing something and feeling proud of themselves. Whenever that happens, which is about 3 times as many times that it gets mentioned this way in the Tanakh, it is definitely frowned upon. So whenever this type of pride is mentioned, it is usually Hashem getting angry at the people for being proud of doing something, such as building a fortress or destroying their enemies. And Hashem always says, none of this would have happened without me. So he gets angry with the people for being proud and arrogant, and then usually brings some kind of punishment upon them. Gosh, this is a really tough shoresh. It's hard to know where to start with this one, but I'm going to start with the nouns, and there are 3 nouns. So there are actually 4 nouns, but 3 of them are found in the Tanakh and in modern Hebrew, and one of them is only found in modern Hebrew. So these first 3 nouns are all going to refer to pride or arrogance, pride in a positive or a negative way, and they can refer to the feeling within the person of pride, or they can refer to the thing that makes us proud. The same way we do in English when we say that someone or something is my pride and joy. It's the thing that makes me feel proud. And so in Hebrew, you've got the same thing. You can use it to mean a thing that someone feels proud about, or the feeling itself. So the first noun is Ga'ava, and it is technically in the Tanakh written with just a single Vav, but when we write it in modern Hebrew, we write it with 2 Vavs to make sure that the reader is aware that these Vavs are pronounced as a V sound rather than an O or an U sound. And this one is usually only used for the emotions within the people, and it's always negative. It's always arrogance, egotism, haughtiness. It's not a good look on the people. It is used a few times in a positive sense, always to mean the triumph of Hashem over Israel's enemies. And in modern Hebrew, it can mean egotism or arrogance, but it can also mean pride in a positive or a negative way. So it doesn't necessarily have to be negative. If you say someone is full of ga'ava, that's not necessarily a negative thing the way it was in the Tanakh. Gaon is another noun that basically has the same meanings mostly in the Tanakh as ga'ava. It's pride or arrogance in a bad way of the people, or the majesty or triumph of Hashem. And throughout the ages, but post-biblical times, Jewish people have referred to certain biblical scholars as a gaon. This is somebody who's very adept at finding the deeper meanings in the Tanakh. It's often used as a kind of an honorific or a title. I've heard people referred to as the gaon of some city in Europe, where they are, this is somebody who is like the smartest person who ever lived in that particular city or village. And it's usually related to Jewish studies of the Tanakh, and studies of how to interpret the Tanakh. And so I think Gaon these days can also refer to just any genius, anyone who's just exceptionally brilliant, whether it has to do with religious studies or not. And Gaon is translated once in the Tanakh with the idea or the meaning of a surge. It's in Job 38:11, and the phrase is Bigaon Galecha, and the JPS translates this as on your surging waves, but it's a smichut construction, so it's actually more literally on the surge of your waves. Now, Gaon also shows up 4 times in the Tanakh with a completely unrelated meaning. And there are 3 times in Jeremiah, once in Zechariah, and each time it's in the phrase Ge'on HaYarden, and it's translated as the jungle of the Jordan, meaning the Jordan River. Now, this is a tough one. It does not look like it is related to the idea of surges or pride, right? It's a jungle. But it might be related to a totally different word, which is gai, and this means like a ravine or a valley with steep walls. And the plural of that word does show up once, but in Ezekiel, it's ge'ayot, and it's translated as valley. So my thought is that maybe this Ge'on HaYarden is like a jungle-ish valley. I'm not sure. I did try to look up the word gai to see what its shoresh is, and Pealim.com has it, but doesn't give a shoresh for it. And the academia, I see it in there, but when I press on it, I get a totally blank page. So they're no help. But remember, I'm not a biblical scholar. If anybody has anything to say here, I'd love to see it. And so now I'm going to talk about the one noun that's not in the Tanakh, because it's related to the word gaon, meaning like a genius. And the word is geonut, which means like the characteristic of having a brilliant mind, right? It's like genius as a quality that somebody has. Kind of like wisdom, right? Except there's a different word that we always translate as wisdom. So this one is like brilliance. Okay, and our last noun is geut. So in the Tanakh, this word could mean the glory or the majesty of Hashem, or it could mean the evil pride or arrogance of the people. And in one instance, it means a plume of smoke, like billowing smoke. So to me, it's like a surge of smoke. And in modern times, it generally means a surge, like a temporary large amount of something. And so it's often used to refer to water, but it can also be used for emotions, or also I've seen it used for like a surge in demand, any kind of a temporary large amount. So there you can talk about a geut when you have, like, after some rains and water is overflowing its riverbanks, you have that surge of water. It can also refer to high tide. And so, of course, water is higher then, right? And that's temporary, of course, until however many hours later that it's going to surge again. And so in the Tanakh, we can see that the meanings of those three words that are in the Tanakh, Ga'ava, Ga'on, and Ge'ut, they are all quite interchangeable. And so it really does depend on context. Whereas in modern Hebrew, they're a little bit more specialized. Where Ga'ava is the feeling of pride, Ga'on is somebody who has something to be proud of mentally, and Ge'ut is more, just a surge of water or emotions or some other figurative thing. Ge'eh is an adjective that means proud. And so this can be, if you just are using it like a characteristic of a person, it can very much be have a negative connotation. He's arrogant or egotistical. But I hear this all the time. My son's Hebrew teacher tells me after every class that he is ge'eh of my son. So it's definitely also used very positively. And the one thing that is important to remember, especially because it's so counterintuitive to us English speakers, is that the preposition that goes with ge'eh is be. The preposition be that we usually think of as meaning in. That's the preposition that goes with ge'eh. So if I want to say, I am proud of you for learning Hebrew, ani ge'ah bechem. And so there are also two verbs, but only one of them is in the Tanakh, and that's lig'ot. It's a pa'al verb, and now I haven't done a video on this particular gizra, but when you have basically all of the binyanim, when there is a verb whose shoresh ends with a yud or a hey, the ending of the infinitive is going to have an ot. So we see it in lir'ot, which means to see, lenasot, which means to try, lehanot, a really common word in modern Hebrew, to enjoy something or to enjoy oneself, lehanot. And of course, how could I forget lehitraot, which we always use to mean see you later, but it literally means to see each other. And all of these verbs have as their final shoresh letter a yud, or what some other scholars consider to be a hey, but I go with the academia. And that's why the infinitive of this pa'al verb is lig'ot, with an ot at the end. So lig'ot is in the Tanakh. It is really super problematic. It shows up twice in Exodus, and this is when Moses and the Israelites are singing their praises to Hashem. And they use the phrase ga'o ga'ah. And it gets translated as he triumphed gloriously, he being Hashem. And so in this phrase, we have what looks like two different forms of the verb, or at least two different words with the same shoresh, one right after another. And we've seen this before. I know just recently I talked about another phrase with this, but I can't find it. I can't find where I talked about it. But this does happen a lot in the Tanakh. It doesn't really happen so much anymore in modern Hebrew. But it usually gives some kind of an extra sense to the verb. I think it often intensifies the verb. But this is definitely something that is better left to a biblical scholar to explain, not someone like me. All right, and so we also see the form yig'eh twice in the Tanakh. So this verb is in the imperfect aspect. To a modern Hebrew learner, it looks like a future tense. Both instances of this verb are found in Job, and the one is pretty clear its meaning. He's talking about whether a papyrus plant can thrive without a marsh. The verb in question is thrive, as in to grow and become bigger and to kind of swell up. But this next verse seems to have everyone flummoxed. This is Job 10:16, and the verse says, Vayig'eh kashachal, tatsudeni v'tashov, titpala vi. The JPS translates this as, it is something to be proud of, to hunt me like a lion, to show yourself wondrous through me time and again. So the JPS admits that meaning of Hebrew is uncertain. And boy, is it. I went to Bible Gateway and I just found this particular verse, and what they do is if you look on a verse and it says, you can click on a button that says, how do all of the various different English translations, how's the wording? And so I have to read these because there's just so many. There's all so different. So this is just the part, Vayig'eh. We have, for it increaseth, and if my head exalt itself. Should I lift my head up? If I lift myself up, if I am proud, I could boast. You rise up, no matter how hard I try, and for pride. If I have any success and feel proud, if I try to be brave, but let it increase. You get the picture. These are all over the place. I don't think anybody knows what this means. So you can definitely see why the JPS says meaning of Hebrew uncertain. And in modern times, the meaning, of course, is much more clear. It means basically to swell or surge, as in mostly it's used for water or someone's feelings or something else kind of figurative, like demand for a product, or like if there's a surge in COVID cases, stuff like that. And then the other verb is lehitgaot, and it means to be proud of something, but it can also mean to boast about something. And just like the adjective ge'eh, this verb also takes the preposition be if we're going to mention what we are proud of. Now, both of these verbs are going to have special conjugations, not only because of the yod or hey in the third position of the shoresh, but also because of the aleph in the middle position. The aleph is an ot kornit, it's a guttural letter, and so that can also cause some issues. Mostly they're just like vowel changes around the letter, either right before it or the vowel that goes with the aleph. I haven't talked about either of these gzarot. I haven't talked about lamed, yod, lamed, hey verbs, and I haven't talked about ayin, aleph verbs, which is ayin is the middle position. And so, but even if I had, I would always recommend when there are two problem letters that especially if they're right next to each other, I always recommend going to pe'alim.com or looking them up in one of the books that gives conjugations for every single verb, because you never know, like they might have seemingly conflicting, right? I might tell you something that that verbs that end with a yod always have this set of circumstances, and then in a separate video I'll tell you that verbs with an aleph in the middle or an ot konit, a guttural letter in the middle, they all do this kind of thing. They all have this kind of change. And those two things that I might say might conflict with each other, and you won't know which one supersedes the other one. And you know what? I don't know either. If I were looking at a verb like this, I would be going to payalim.com to make sure that I'm saying the word right if I had to use it. All right, that's it for today. It wasn't too many words, but now we know all about pride. If you have any questions or feedback, please leave it in the comments. Hit like if you enjoyed this video and subscribe and press the notification bell if you want to see more. Lahidrot b'pa'am ha'ba'ah. See you next time.